Hey there, folks, and welcome out to the Single Player Podcast. I'm your one and only host, I am 16-Bit, and I got a good show for this week because we're going to be talking about leaks from Logitech, Konami hints at a return of a classic franchise, trouble at G4, plus more. So sit back, relax, enjoy the show, and I'll be with you in a bit. Alright folks, and we're back, and now it's time to start the show with my favorite segment, your favorite segment, everyone in the world's favorite segment. It's time for the gaming forecast. So let's see what's coming out between the week of September 11th to the 17th. Okay, on September 13th, you have 6 games coming out. Freedom Planet 2 for Windows, Isonzo for Windows, PlayStation 4, 5, Xbox One, and Series X, Little Orpheus for Windows, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, 5, Xbox One, and Series X, SCP Secret Files for Windows, Sunday Gold for Windows, and 13 on Nintendo Switch. Then on the 15th, you have a whopping 11 games coming out. Bear and Breakfast for Nintendo Switch, Blind Fate Edo no Yami for Windows, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, 5, Xbox One, and Series X, Despot's Game for Windows, Mac, Linux, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, 5, Xbox One, and Series X. Dragon Quest X Offline, releasing exclusively in Japan on Windows, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, and 5. Dungeons 3 for Nintendo Switch. Fairy Fencer F Refrain Chord, releasing exclusively in Japan on Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, and 5. Fault STP Lightcraft for Nintendo Switch. Metal Hellsinger for Windows, PlayStation 5, and Xbox Series X. Outer Wilds for PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. SBK 22 for Windows, PlayStation 4, 5, Xbox One, and Series X. And Trinity Trigger, releasing exclusively in Japan on Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, and 5. And that was your gaming forecast. Some interesting stuff there. Freedom Planet 2 sounds interesting. I actually really like the first one. I wish Dragon Quest X Offline would come over here in the US, but unfortunately, for whatever reason, Square just doesn't want to bring it over here. I don't know why, because I remember they said a couple of years ago that if Dragon Quest XI did really well, then they would consider bringing 10 over. It did really well, and yet we still don't have Dragon Quest X. I don't know what the hell Square is doing, but for the love of God, bring Dragon Quest X over here. I don't care if it's online or offline, I want to play the fucker. Anyway, with that being said, let's move on to our first topic. Alright, and for our first topic, so a couple of weeks ago, Logitech and Tencent announced a partnership to develop a gaming handheld. Well, it seems that within a month, the entire thing has been leaked. Yep, that's right, we have our first images of this thing, courtesy of Evan Blass. Now, usually when leaks happen, normally there's some sort of speculation that it might not actually be real. However, it seems that Evan's tweet with the photos of this thing now say, media not displayed. The image has been removed in response to a report from the copyright holder. So yeah, obviously Logitech was not happy about that. And of course they took it down. Now, from this thing, it looks basically exactly, almost like the Steam Deck, except just without the touchpads and in a Xbox controller configuration. Now, from what we do know from the photos of this thing, it also runs on Android. At least that's what I think, because, of course, when you look at the photos, it mentions Google Play and YouTube and Chrome. So clearly, yeah, it is running on Android. Now, there's outside of that, there's not much known about the specs of this thing. One speculation is that this thing might have the Snapdragon G3X chip. Of course, that has yet to be seen because that thing was announced last year, like late last year. And so far, to my knowledge, I don't think anything has actually used it yet. But the thing that gets me, though, is clearly they're trying to compete against, of course, the Switch and the Steam Deck. And I get that, but my problem is that you've got, okay, here's the thing, all right? The Steam Deck is running Linux. So because of that, it can run a lot of games on PC. Stuff that doesn't even show up on consoles or even mobile, okay? Whereas this, if it's running Android and has Google Play, then all it's going to run is just Android games. And that, to me, is not really appealing, okay? Because like I said, there are some games that are on Steam that aren't on mobile. In fact, there are games on the Switch that aren't on mobile. So it's like, okay, you're doing an Android handheld, that's fine, but one, there's not many games that I think would justify buying something like this, and two, there's already a million Android handheld gaming systems. Okay, you can get Android handhelds from like anywhere between $250 to like $50. All right, like it varies. So to me, it's like, what's the point? Okay, you're basically jumping into a market that's already flooded with consoles that use the exact same software, OS. Okay, it's just I just think it's a bit ridiculous. Now, granted, we're talking about a month after this thing it was announced, so it's possible that a lot has changed, and most likely it's not going to run Android, but who knows at this point. I just think I just don't see this as being the Switch or Steam Deck killer. You know what I'm saying? Like, come on, Logitech. You could do better than that. So, anyway, let's move on to our next story. All right, and for our first topic, so a couple of weeks ago, Logitech and Tencent announced a partnership to develop a gaming handheld. Well, it seems that within a month, the entire thing has been leaked. Yep, that's right. We have our first images of this thing, courtesy of Evan Blass. Now, usually when leaks happen, normally there's some sort of speculation that it might not actually be real. However, it seems that Evan's tweet with the photos of this thing now say media not displayed. The image has been removed in response to a report from the copyright holder. So yeah, obviously Logitech was not happy about that. And of course they took it down. Now, from this thing, it looks basically exactly almost like the Steam Deck, except just without the touchpads and in a Xbox controller configuration. Now, from what we do know from the photos of this thing, it also runs on Android. At least that's what I think, because, of course, when you look at the photos, it mentions Google Play and YouTube and Chrome. So clearly, yeah, it is running on Android. Now, outside of that, there's not much known about the specs of this thing. One speculation is that this thing might have the Snapdragon G3X chip. Of course, that has yet to be seen because that thing was announced last year, like late last year. And so far, to my knowledge, I don't think anything has actually used it yet. But the thing that gets me, though, is clearly they're trying to compete against, of course, the Switch and the Steam Deck. And I get that, but my problem is that you've got, okay, here's the thing, all right? The Steam Deck is running Linux. So because of that, it can run a lot of games on PC. Stuff that doesn't even show up on consoles or even mobile, okay? Whereas this, if it's running Android and has Google Play, then all it's going to run is just Android games. And that, to me, is not really appealing, okay? Because like I said, there are some games that are on Steam that aren't on mobile. In fact, there are games on the Switch that aren't on mobile. So it's like, okay, and okay, you're doing an Android handheld, that's fine, but one, there's not many games that I think would justify buying something like this, and two, there's already a million Android handheld gaming systems. Okay, you can get Android handhelds from like anywhere between 250 to like $50. All right, like it varies. So to me, it's like, what's the point? Okay, you're basically jumping into a market that's already flooded with consoles that have that use the exact same software, OS. Okay, it's just I just think it's a bit ridiculous. Now, granted, we're talking about a month after this thing it was announced, so it's possible that a lot has changed, and most likely it's not going to run Android, but who knows at this point. I just think this is I just don't see this as being the Switch or Steam Deck killer. You know what I'm saying? Like, come on, Logitech. You could do better than that. So, anyway, let's move on to our next story.
It's my bath time. There's nothing I like more than a good, warm, cozy bath. In fact, I think I'll just turn this heater up a little bit.
What a bonehead. But at least he got to keep his soul. Introducing a world where you take more than life. You take the soul. Soul Reverb.
All right, folks, and we're back. And first up in our next round of stories, we have some news coming out of Tokyo Game Show. Of course, TGS hasn't actually started yet. Won't start until September 15th to the 18th. But we also have some news coming out of Konami's lineup for TGS. Now, most of it really isn't that interesting. In fact, the only ones on the entire list that I even know about are Super Bomberman R2 and a couple of Yu-Gi-Oh games, and that's really it. But the one that has everyone's attention is an unannounced game. So what I'm about to tell you is this is coming from Konami's Japanese website, and it's a rough translation from Google Translate, so please bear with me for a bit. But it says, and I quote, Konami new release stage. Voice actor Yuki Kaji will be invited as a guest to represent fans of the world-famous series title and perform a Konami new release stage. Now, obviously, so they're announcing a brand new game from a franchise we all know. Of course, now the question is what exactly this game will be, and speculation has been rampant. The big one, obviously, that everyone's been talking about is Silent Hill, but I do think that there's other Konami franchises that people forget about that I think are also world famous, stuff like Castlevania, Contra, Metal Gear, so it could be any one of those as well. I think the reason why people immediately gravitate towards Silent Hill isn't just because they're fans of the franchise, but also because some people have this weird belief that if Konami brings back Silent Hill, it's going to be published by Sony, and it's going to be Silent Hills. You know, the one that was going to be made by Kojima before his contract wasn't renewed. So some people think that for whatever reasons, PT will finally come back. It'll restart development. We're going to get it again. Folks, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but if PT does come back, it's not going to be the same game, and Kojima's probably not going to be involved with it. In fact, I guarantee you, if Silent Hill ever comes back, it's not even going to be related to PT. But some people, for some reason, want to constantly believe that it will be. I don't know. It's like I said, it could be anything at this point. It could be that we get, a new Silent Hill. It could be new Contra. It could be new Castlevania. Actually, I probably would think it's like a new Castlevania. Because Castlevania is, I'd say, just as popular and well-known as Silent Hill. Actually, now that I think about it, you know what I just had a realization. You know what it could be? It could be a re-release of Snatcher. I'm just saying, that's a game that people have been asking for a re-release for many years. It could be that. Who knows? But anyway, we're just going to have to wait until TGS. And apparently, this is going to be announced on September 16th from around 3:30 to just over 4. So until then, we're just going to have to wait and see what the hell Konami has planned. Anyway, let's move on to our next story. All right, next up, we have some acquisition updates. Not entirely, acquisition, some of it is just, let's just say it's a lot of business bullshit. So first and foremost, it seems Tencent and Sony have acquired over 30% stake in From Software. Yep, the news came out this past week that now officially Tencent owns 16% of From Software and Sony owns only 14%. Now, this doesn't mean that they own this doesn't mean that they're the majority shareholder, because technically Kadokawa is the majority. They have over 69%. Nice. So, yeah, it's not, I don't think it's enough for Tencent or Sony to really make an impact on From Software, but it is something that I think we should be a little concerned, especially from Tencent, which is basically just a shell corporation by the Chinese Communist Party. But yeah, I don't think Kadokawa would be. Look, Elden Ring is making so much goddamn money, and so is From Software's other games, that I don't think they would be willing to sell the rest of their shares of From Software to Tencent and Sony. I don't think they'd be willing to do that. So, for now, it's not something horrible, but it is something that maybe we should keep an eye on about, because who knows? Tencent might try to buy out more, because they've been trying to take over the gaming industry for a long while. Okay? So, it is something that we should be worried about. Sony, I'm not really surprised because, I think if I remember correctly, most sales of Elden Ring have been on PlayStation platforms. So it does make sense that they'd be willing to... I mean, at least when it comes to consoles. I'm not really sure if that also counts PC. But I do know the majority of sales do come on consoles comes from Sony platforms. So, of course, it makes sense that Sony would buy more of a stake in the company. If anything, I hope this means that we'll finally get a fucking PC release for Bloodborne. Seriously, that thing has been exclusive to the PS4 since 2015. It's about damn time it got re-released on other platforms. But anyway, with that being said, our other bit of news about acquisitions comes from NetEase, because it seems that they've actually acquired Quantic Dream. That's right, the company responsible for stuff like the Indigo Prophecy, Heavy Rain, Beyond Two Souls, and Detroit Become Human. My God, why the hell would you buy that? Seriously, Quantic Dreams is one of those studios that only made one good game, that being Omnicron: The Nomad Soul, and that's mostly because it has fucking David Bowie in it. But it also made some of the most pretentious games I have ever played. We're talking, like I said, stuff like Heavy Rain. I remember Heavy Rain coming out and it was being pushed like crazy, and all anyone did was just meme on it. Beyond Two Souls, Detroit Become Human. Yeah, these games are pretentious as fuck. I don't know why NetEase would want to acquire Quantic Dream, but they did. They did. Ugh. So yeah, congratulations, I guess? I don't know. Anyway, with that being said, let's move on to our next story. Next up, we have an update about Domina. Now, I've talked about this game in the past, primarily because of the controversy around it. This was back in March, and apparently what happened was, there's a game called Domina that's basically a gladiatorial management sim. At least that's what I'm seeing from it. Okay, I haven't played it yet. I have it, but I just haven't gone around to it yet. Anyway, it seems like a very interesting game. But apparently what happened was he updated the game, and in the patch notes he put in a rant about masks. Yeah, the whole COVID thing. And apparently he caught a lot of heat for that. And since then he had been going back and forth with with people about it on his game's forums. Well, it seems the developer was banned from the Steam forums. Now, of course, it was only meant to be temporary, but of course he went on full blast on Twitter about this entire thing, and I think eventually his account was actually banned from Twitter. And of course that didn't stop him, because what happened, he started updating the game again, putting more rants and patch notes, and at one point even renaming the game to Dominus as a jab against trans people, which then got him officially banned from Steam. And I think his game was actually pulled from the platform entirely. Now, I don't agree again with what he's been doing. I don't agree with him putting rants and patch notes. I think he should have just backed away from the forums, because sometimes, here's the problem, okay? I get it, when you get a lot of people shitting on you, it can be a little tempting to want to go back at people, but sometimes it's best to just log out and just walk away. All right, sometimes I do that. When I get a bunch of people up my ass on Twitter, I just kind of log out and walk away, because that's really that's, in my opinion, it's the right choice, because social media has a tendency to fuck with your head. All right, you suddenly think that the entire world is against you, and you have to fight and defend yourself and all this kind of shit. In reality, you're just fighting against a bunch of retards. That's all. So really, all you have to do is just log out and walk away, and focus on stuff in your personal life. And I think that's what he should have done. Instead, he got himself into this vicious cycle of just arguing with people like crazy, and eventually got him and his game completely removed from Steam. Now, with that being said, however, I don't think he should have been banned from Steam. I don't think, because, like, here's the thing. That's not going to stop him. That's not going to make him change his opinion. There's this weird fucking belief, and it's one that I don't understand, where people think that if you're banned from social media, somehow it's like time out when you're a kid, and then you'll just be put in the corner and you'll have to think about what you actually did. Like, there are retards out there who genuinely believe that when you ban someone from social media, from a platform, whatever, that somehow they'll think about what they said. No, that's not how it works. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but you're not helping the situation. You're only making it worse. Because when you ban someone, you're basically just confirming what they believe. Okay? They believe the whole world's against them. Then what do? You ban them. That's not going to make them think think twice about what they're saying. Okay? All you've done is just basically make them double down on what they already believe. So, congratulations, Steam. You haven't actually helped the situation. You only made it worse. And besides, I've seen developers get away with shit that's probably even worse. Okay? I remember many, many years ago, and probably some of you will remember this. Back in 2014, during Gamergate, Brianna Wu was desperately seeking attention and trying to claim that she was being harassed and shit. And at one point, she tried to harass herself on her page for her game Revolution 60 by going on her forums and asking, is Brianna Wu a horrible person? And going on and on about how Brianna Wu is a terrible human being and all this kind of shit. Now, how do we know that this is Brianna Wu who did this? Well, because she forgot to sign out of her developer's account. So she was posting under her own name, not realizing that everyone could see it was her. And then she had deleted the entire thread. And I don't think she tried pulling that again. But she never got pulled from Steam, like, at all. Steam didn't do anything. So yeah, Steam has a tendency of not being particularly consistent with their own policies. Like I said, I don't agree with what he's been doing. I don't agree with him putting shit in the patch notes or arguing with people in the forums. However, I don't think he should have been banned. I don't think the game should have been pulled. I think all you've done is basically further radicalized him. You haven't helped the situation. You've only made it worse. Anyway, guys, I'm going to take a short break, and we'll be right back after this.
2 burgers to go, please.
Introducing Burger Time, the new home video game where you're the chef trying to make hamburgers. There's just one problem. The food is trying to make hamburger out of you. Another hot new arcade game for Intellivision, Burger Time. With arcade-like super graphics, only on Intellivision.
We're closed now.
All right, folks, we're back. And first up in our last round of stories, we have some news coming out of G4 because it's officially been announced that the president, Russell Aarons, has officially left the network. That's right. Apparently, she left in July, and now it's been officially confirmed that she is actually gone from the network. And you know what? I'm not really that surprised. G4 has been going through a lot of issues for basically the last year, okay? Their viewership and subscriptions have completely dropped. No one is interested in them at all. You have the fact that most of their content is just terrible. And the fact that most of the people they have on there keep getting into political rants, calling potential viewers sexist, racist, all sorts of bullshit. So it's like, gee, I wonder why the network is failing. Could it be the fact that basically it's the people running it who have no idea what the hell they're doing? Like, I've tried to watch Modern G4. It's awful. I don't know what the fuck they were thinking, but it's just downright terrible. Like, I tried watching... I talked about this a few months ago, but I tried watching X-Play and Attack of the Show, and I had to shut it off after a few minutes. It was so boring. It was so uninteresting, because essentially what you have are like 2-hour-long live streams. And when it comes to X-Play, remember the old days? It was what, like half an hour? It was like, well, half an hour with commercials and 24 without. But within that half an hour, you would get about 4 or 5 reviews that were anywhere between 3 to 5 minutes long. They were quick and they were to the point. So you got an idea as to how good or bad the game was. Okay? This time, however, they spend 20 goddamn minutes talking about one game, and then they do it for the next game. Every fucking game they talk about, they have to discuss for like 20 minutes long. And you could see this in the separate reviews for the games, where what they do is they chop up the episode and they basically like put the review separately later on, and it's like 20 minutes long. It's ridiculous. It gets boring after a while. You know, they did this with Attack of the Show. It's worse because essentially they're again, it's the same thing as it used to be, except now everything is basically expanded and padded out longer than it actually should be. And that's just Attack of the Show and X-Play. That's just only 2 shows. Their other shows are even more boring. I tried watching, what was it, Invitation to Party. That was just cringe-inducing. I don't know what the hell they're thinking, but that is just, like, dear God. Okay, you're doing a live D&D session. Okay, that's cool. But do you really need to have the people in costumes and then do their moves and then go on to a giant, well, not giant, but a stage to act out their thing? Like, you don't have to do that. It just, again, it's padded out. They also have a whole bunch of other shows, but I haven't really watched them because, again, they don't look really that appealing. You know, I see maybe like 1 or 2 clips and I'm like, oh, yeah, that's stupid. I don't want to watch that. I don't know what the hell's going on there, but they've completely destroyed their network. And at this point, I'm not even sure if they're going to live to see next year. You know, it's possible that they could be shut down by the end of this year. Who knows? But while I do think like the programming is part of the problem, I think another problem is also how they were dealing with their viewers and how they were treating them. Because this, I don't think any of this would have happened if Frosk didn't do that little fucking rant she did on X-Play a couple months back. You guys remember that? Where she was going on about how the viewers are sexist because they want someone like Morgan Webb and Olivia Munn and blah, blah, blah. She was going on and on, calling her viewers sexist. And when you do that, that shuts people off. They don't want to deal with you, okay? So I kind of believe that none of this would have been as bad as it was if Frosk didn't pull that little stunt she pulled a couple of months ago. And it's sad to watch because G4 means a lot to me. You know, I grew up watching it throughout my middle and high school years. I would come home from school and just watch whatever they had on, and it was awesome. It was really good. Back in the early days, it was great. Then it started to go to shit by around 2007 or so, and I just kind of stopped watching it after a while. You know, especially when they stopped playing reruns of the older shows. you know, I want to like this revival, but just everything I'm seeing is just downright terrible. It's not as good as it used to be. It's a shadow of its former self. And honestly, I don't think anything on that network will change until they bring in someone who knows what the fuck they're doing. And if you need someone like that, I'm here, okay? Just throwing that out there. If you need someone to run the network, trust me, I could probably do a far better job than whoever the hell's been running it over the past year. So anyway, let's move on to our next story. All right, and next up, we have an update on Mario Kart Tour, because apparently they've announced that they'll be removing the gacha elements from the game. Yeah, so apparently they put out a tweet saying, and I quote, "Here's a peek at Mario Kart Tour's update coming late September. Battle mode will be added along with a spotlight shop where you can exchange rubies for drivers, carts, and gliders. Also, pipes you can fire by using rubies will be removed. See the notification for details." And if you go to it, and if you go to the notifications in the app, apparently they explain that new drivers, carts, and gliders, as well as drivers, carts, and gliders that have appeared in the past will be available. So yeah, all of those gacha elements, all of those seasonal exclusive characters will now be available for everyone. And you know what? I like to hear that, because the thing is, gacha, look, I get it, okay? It's part of the whole games as a service thing, but honestly, I hate that. I hate games as a service. It fucks up with the game, and basically what you end up doing is you get a lot of whales that just keep spending thousands and thousands of dollars and just racking up so much debt because they can't, because they're spending so much money on these games. And so I think removing gacha elements from your game isn't just bold, it's downright commendable. Like, I'm actually kind of shocked Nintendo has decided to get rid of the gacha elements. And you know what? I wish more publishers would do that. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen. Because, you see, the thing is, because a lot of these games are designed specifically to attract whales. That's what they want. Their entire income is reliant on these whales, who are dumb enough to even give them money in the first place. So, unfortunately, a lot of these games are not going to willingly remove their gacha and microtransaction elements. The whole thing is nothing more than a parasitic relationship. So, honestly, I have to give Nintendo props for trying to remove that content from their game. I remember when they first started getting into mobile, I think Iwata said that he wanted to develop these games so that it doesn't attract whales. And so what I think Nintendo's trying to do is stay within those principles, and that to me is perfectly fine. That, and they probably see this as a PR disaster just waiting to happen. Can you imagine that? Someone literally becomes homeless because they were so addicted to a Nintendo game that they basically spent all their money on it. You know, it doesn't exactly look very well. So I think what they're trying to do is basically to kill birds with one stone. Hey, we look good, and on top of that, we're kind of staying within the principles of Iwata. So let's just hope that they keep it that way. Anyway, let's move on to our next story. All right, and for our last story, I thought this one was actually really neat. So during this previous EVO, SNK and Capcom actually did an art collaborative where they did these two posters with their various characters kind of going up against one another. And recently, VGC did an interview with the producer of SNK's fighting games, Yasuyuki Oda. And because of this art collaboration, he was asked about the idea of them working together on another SNK versus Capcom game. And what he said I thought was very interesting. He said, definitely in the future. That's something I think everybody on all sides in both parties are interested in making a reality. Especially after we saw the reaction to the posters, it helped us reconfirm that this is probably one of the most wanted things from the fighting game community across the entire world. Damn fucking right. Folks, do you realize it's been 19 years since the last SNK vs. Capcom game? No joke. SVC Chaos came out in 2003. It's been long enough And I think it's about damn time we had SNK and Capcom squaring off against one another. Especially since within the last couple of years, SNK has really made a revival when it comes to their fighting games. I mean, we have a new Samurai Showdown, we've had a new King of Fighters, we have a new fucking Fatal Fury coming out. Now is the perfect time for a SNK versus Capcom revival. Hell, I'd even say maybe it's time to re-release some of the older games. I mean, I don't think any of them have ever actually been re-released. I know Match of the Millennium actually got a re-release a couple of years ago. And even though that's a Neo Geo Pocket Color game, it is still one of the best fighting games on the NGPC. And it did, I think, really well on the Switch. So yeah, I would love to see those get a re-release. Especially SVC Chaos. I remember when that came out, and a lot of people shat on it because it was still using pixel art. You have to understand, at that time, 2D pixel art wasn't exactly that cool, and retro gaming was a very, very niche thing. Not a lot of people were really into it. I can attest to that, because at that time, I was starting to get into retro gaming, and it was a very, very niche hobby. So I think if it got re-released today, there would be a far better appreciation for it, along with the first two previous games. So hell yeah, SNK and Capcom, give us a new SVC. I would totally be up for that, and I guarantee you a whole bunch of other people will. Anyway, guys, I'm going to take a short break, and we'll be right back after this.
Hadouken! Senpu Retsu! ネットで戦えハードを超えろカプコン VS SNK2 タプコン
All right, folks, and that's it for this week. I want to thank you all for listening. Remember, if you liked any of the music that I played on this week's episode, links are in the description. Also, last week's episode was a live stream, and I don't think a lot of people really saw it because it was an experiment. I tried to see if I could do an entire show live, and really, it didn't work out as much as I had wanted it to. So I think from now on, I'm probably just going to keep doing edited episodes as I usually do. But if you want to go check that out, it's up on the channel. Anyway, with that being said, I want to thank you all for listening. I'll see you next week. And remember to keep gaming.